What is going on, Trash Talkers? We're back with another episode for you. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Conor McGregor and what is next for him on the horizon following his loss to Dustin Poirier at UFC 264. All that and much more coming your way right now! All right, Nick, UFC 264 is now behind us, and unfortunately, it ended the way it did with Conor McGregor breaking his tibia and really just kind of taking the wind out of the UFC's sails. This was supposed to be one of the most epic fights that the UFC was supposed to be talking about. You had a trilogy fight between two fighters that just absolutely did not like each other. The marketing around this, all the hype that went into it, everything, and then all of a sudden at the end of the first round, Conor McGregor can no longer go. There is a doctor stoppage that gives Dustin Poirier a TKO victory. You know, I guess at this point, everything's been said about that fight and kind of what happened and how it goes. I guess the question now is, what's next for Conor McGregor?
Yeah, that's a good question. When we look at who's available, you're going to give Conor McGregor another name like Dustin Poirier, right? You can't just give him some Joe Schmo and then put him into another match against Poirier or in a title match against Oliveira. Like, it's got to be somebody significant to say, all right, Conor's actually earned the right to face Poirier for a fourth time, or he's deserving of a championship fight. So really, I think we're looking at the top five. Nobody out of the top 10 can really fight Conor McGregor. And when we look at the top five, right, we got Dustin Poirier, who is all but guaranteed to be in the title fight against Charles Oliveira next. So that really leaves Justin Gaethje, Beneil Dariush, and Michael Chandler, and Conor McGregor sits at five. Those three, to me, make the most sense. But when we're looking at who is the best fighter to face Conor McGregor, who's going to maximize the value of having a Conor McGregor fight, it's got to be Michael Chandler. The way I have it is Beneil Dariush barely, like, he had a solid fight against Tony Ferguson, but he is nowhere near the name value that Justin Gaethje or Michael Chandler are. But what Michael Chandler has been able to do since he's entered the UFC, he's been able to talk on the mic very clearly, very vocal. He's really good, and I think he's the best at promoting a fight alongside Conor. The two of them going back and forth, Conor playing the heel, Michael Chandler being the good guy, just like Dustin was, that would be a perfect way to market this fight, and I think that's how you get the most out of another Conor McGregor fight in the UFC. Justin Gaethje, a great fighter, would be a great fight against Conor McGregor, but he just doesn't speak on the mic the way Michael Chandler does. And when you look at the fact that Michael Chandler is also coming off of a loss to Charles Oliveira in that title fight, these two are both looking to bounce back to the top and get another title fight as soon as possible. So what better match to make than have these two fight against each other? We already found out that Conor McGregor, he's going to be on crutches for 6 weeks, and then you can expect there to be some recovery after that, and then you have another 6-week camp on top of that for the next fight he comes into. So at earliest, we're talking late this year, early next year for a Conor McGregor fight. And Michael Chandler fought a few months ago, so he's the closest in line with that Conor McGregor timeline. Beneil Dariush also was on that card with Michael Chandler, so he is also there. But again, Michael Chandler's just ahead of Beneil Dariush in my book. And then Justin Gaethje, he's been sitting idle since he lost to Khabib months ago. I think this guy needs to get a fight now. He can't be out much longer. Otherwise, the ring rust is going to start to add up, and he's going to find himself in a bad situation where he'll be on a multi-fight losing streak. When we look at this, though, I think Michael Chandler, to me, makes the most sense for the next Conor McGregor matchup.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're talking about selling tickets and creating hype and everything, I believe that a Conor McGregor-Michael Chandler fight would be absolutely insane, right? I agree with you on that point. Where I don't agree is that you're going to give me a Justin Gaethje Beneil Dariush fight. I just don't think that a guy who was just fighting Khabib is going to be fighting a co-main, just a regular
But
main card event. Hold on, I mean we're talking about a guy who was just fighting for the title. Beneil Dariush is new to the top five. These guys have to get their shot eventually, and you're telling me that you're going to take two of the biggest names in the division and stack them on top of each other versus splitting them off and letting them carry their own fights as main events, because you're telling me that a Michael Chandler Justin Gaethje fight wouldn't be a main card main event. I think I would buy that instantly if I knew that was the main event. I mean, you're telling me that you have to take both of those guys. Sure, I'd love to see them fight. And again, the marketability, I understand. But what you're missing is the fact that these guys can carry it based on their own names, and we don't need to see both of them together right now. What we need to see is that Beneil Dariush deserves to be in the top five, and Justin Gaethje gets to fight sooner rather than later. So I believe at this point, yes, while I want to see a Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler fight, I think at the end of the day, I have to wait to see a Conor McGregor Beneil Dariush fight, and I have to see a Justin Gaethje Michael Chandler fight in the near future.
I think that would be a great matchup, but you've got to maximize Conor McGregor's potential. If he loses one more fight, to me his career is pretty much over. There's no recovery after 3 straight losses and coming off of a broken leg. That's just too much for him to handle, and I just think that people are going to lose interest. Conor McGregor doesn't just reach out to the UFC fans. He reaches out to everybody who does anything with sports. If you think of sports, Conor McGregor is one of the top 10 people you think of, and he is going to hold that value for not much longer if he loses another fight. You've got to give him a fight. You have to give him a fight where it's a really good opponent for him, where if he wins, he could be boosted into a title contention or a Dustin Poirier fight. If you give him Beneil Dariush, he kind of stands pat. To me, that doesn't mean he deserves to be in a fight with Charles Oliveira or Dustin Poirier. Even if you give him Justin Gaethje, I don't even know if that is enough for him to get a rematch with Dustin or a fight with Charles. I think Michael Chandler, he was the champion at Bellator twice. He is a guy who has a huge history, and I think that his ability to market this fight is what the UFC is looking for. The UFC always is about money. It's the bottom dollar is what matters to them. By 8 o'clock on Saturday at UFC 264, Dana had said the US alone had reached 1.2 million pay-per-view buys, and they were already estimating in the range of 1.7 to 1.8 million pay-per-view buys for the entire globe. When you look at these guys, who's the closest that's going to get to that number? Who's the closest to matching Dustin Poirier? I just think there's no one that gets even remotely close to Michael Chandler.
I get that, and like I said, I'll concede that fact to you. But what I'm not willing to concede is that the UFC is willing to take a loss on a Justin Gaethje Beneil Dariush fight. I do not agree.
I'm not saying, but why do they have to fight each other?
Hold on. I do not agree that Dana White will allow that to happen, because if for Beneil Dariush to stay in the top 5 where he is, he has to prove himself. And the only other person that he's going to be able to fight is going to be Justin Gaethje. Dustin Poirier is fighting Charles Oliveira. We already know that. Then if you're telling me that Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor are fighting, that leaves Justin Gaethje. He's the only one available still.
I disagree. Because
how else does he prove that he belongs in the top 5 without having to fight somebody that's above him?
Beneil Dariush was outside the top 5 before he fought Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson, we know, is on the downside of his career, and it was a pretty easy fight for Beneil Dariush to win. He won that fight. Tony's out of the top 5. Beneil takes his spot at number 3, and then Beneil now has to earn his spot. There's guys like Islam Makhachev, who's about to fight next week, who could totally be an opponent for Beneil Dariush to fight him and claim that number 3 spot. Like Dan Hooker could get another fight to try to get back into the top 5. There's so many guys. Rafael dos Anjos is still there. He's a guy who's still kicking and trying to make it towards a title fight. There are guys outside the top 5 that Beneil has to fight to show that he earned that top 3 spot. He didn't just claim it, but now he has defended it as well. You got to show that you are the true number 3 contender in the world. You're not just some guy who got lucky against a big name who's on the downslide of his career.
You can't tell me that you're defending your number 3 position in the division by beating somebody who's ranked number 7, number 8, number 9.
It happens all the time. It happens all the time.
I understand that, but these guys aren't in this situation. This division has some of the biggest names that the UFC has to offer. You're talking about the Dustin Poiriers, the Michael Chandlers, the Conor McGregors, Justin Gaethje, who just fought Khabib in his final fight. I mean, we're talking about these guys who have so much name value. I just cannot imagine that Conor McGregor would be on the same card as Michael Chandler, and you're leaving Beneil Dariush and Justin Gaethje to wave out in the wind and just be on some fight night or the middle of some main card somewhere else. I just don't believe that's what Dana will do.
Look, I agree. Justin Gaethje deserves a fight, but I just don't think that Beneil Dariush has earned the right to fight Justin Gaethje. Dariush
to the top 3. I mean,
but he has to still. He has to show that he is the true number 3. That he didn't just luck his way there.
Nope.
Anybody? Okay, come on. Anybody who fought Tony Ferguson would have won that fight. Tony was not winning that fight. We knew that.
Doesn't matter. He beat Tony Ferguson. You have to respect how it happened, whether you agree or not. And he earned the number 3 title.
And what happens if say Gaethje and Dariush fight, and Dariush loses, he doesn't move because he's already behind Gaethje in the rankings. There's nobody for him to fall behind. It just doesn't make. He's got to show that he has earned that number 3. Give him some guy outside of the top 5 to fight to show that he has truly earned being the number 3 contender in the lightweight division. I just don't think that he deserves to fight within the top 5 just yet. Justin Gaethje is the only exception, and honestly, he's gonna have to fight somebody out the top 5 because there is nobody left. The only way he would fight somebody in the top 5 is if it's Conor, and I already think it's Chandler. You think it could be possibly Gaethje. I just don't see any other opportunity for Gaethje.
I want to throw one more idea out there, and we'll just talk about it pretty quickly. But we're assuming that the Dustin Poirier Charles Oliveira fight isn't going to be for a while. Well, Dustin Poirier didn't take a lot of damage, and frankly, he could fight relatively soon. I mean, we're talking about in the next 2-3 months. Right?
He's not going to want to go through a camp. He hates fighting. He's already said, he's been very vocal about that. He hates going through camps. He hates fighting. He just does it for the payday.
I get that. But he's going to fight for a title. I mean,
you're right. Yeah. No, he's guaranteed that for sure.
I understand that. Charles Oliveira may not be the champion by the time that Conor McGregor fights. That is just
right.
the idea. It could be Charles Oliveira could be his next fight.
Justin Gaethje? You want
no, Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor.
There's no way that we're gonna get this Charles Oliveira Dustin Poirier fight until earliest October. That's the earliest point that would happen because they have to agree to.
The earliest we even see Conor McGregor minimum is December, and I doubt he's going to be fighting this year.
Highly doubt it. I agree. I don't think that you can have that turnaround. The guys in the top 5 fight twice a year. They don't fight more than that. Unless your name is Israel Adesanya, you don't fight more than twice a year at the top of the UFC. It just they don't fight that way. Because they want more money and they're not getting it, so they're not going to fight. If you're going to put your record on the line against a top guy where you have a chance at actually losing, you're going to make sure you're getting the biggest base payday possible because you don't want to leave money out on the table. You don't want to risk your future by taking some small deal and then losing the next fight, and then your UFC career is over and there's no more money coming in from the UFC. You have to be very strategic because the UFC does not pay their fighters a whole hell of a lot of money, and these fighters want to make sure they are getting every single penny they possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like an issue in and of its own right, and I believe that that's something we're going to have to talk about in a future video. But at the end of the day, I think that there's a lot of discussion here that needs to be had, and obviously there's going to be some fallout from this. We're going to have to see when Dustin and Charles Oliveira really get their fight situated. We're going to have to see what happens next with Michael Chandler and what happens next with Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje, as you mentioned, hasn't fought this year. I mean, he has not fought in 2021. That is the reality. And if he doesn't fight soon, in the next month or two, there's going to be a lot of hell to pay for him, because he's not going to be able to hold his own in the octagon. And that's just the God's honest truth. But either way, I think that the main point that we want to make here is that we just want to see good fights. We want to see fights between insane people who just can talk on the mic, that can carry cards. We just want to see the best fights. And if I had to guess, if I had to really just put my finger on it, I believe that Dana White will be able to put together the best fight cards moving forward. But I want to hear from you guys. Let us know what you think. What's next for Conor McGregor? Who do you see on the horizon for him to fight? Be really interested to see what you guys think, and where you see his career going from here. All right, well, that's going to do it for now. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell. We go live every single day. That'll be all. Peace and love.